is Deborah. This is our final day to explore art and animals, and we're going to do yet again another technique that you'll be able to practice and become more proficient at. All right, so I have my owl that I created on Monday with y'all. I had set it up on little bottle caps to allow for it to dry. So I think what I'll do here today is I'll go ahead and paint a basic coat on it. As you know, paint takes a little bit to dry, so I may not get it all done because we want to have plenty of time for our next project. So I'm going to go ahead and get some paint ready here. All right. Now, we could go two different ways with this. We can always do something traditional, and that is more, not that this looks like a real owl, but certainly has some more traditional colors in it. Or you can always go whatever color palette that you would like. Certainly, pinks and purples and yellows and greens all work equally well to create your owl. So we can go ahead. I was thinking I would start with a teal color. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of paint here, as I know this green that I have, when I put white with it, the color is so pretty. I have some water here, and I also have some paper towels because I'm going to probably need those as well. So make sure that you have your paint shirt or painting clothes and something to wipe your brushes and your hands off if need be. Okay, now I know that these pieces, the eyes and the beak, I'm going to paint those last. Those are certainly because they're smaller, and I want those details to be painted very nicely. So I'm going to paint those last. I'm going to work with my biggest areas first. And when I do this head here, I'm going to be kind of careful to not get too much paint on those. So I'm going to try to choose a brush here that I think would be just about the right size to paint the larger area, which it looks like this 1/2-inch brush would be about right. If I use a brush that's too small, it's just going to take me longer to paint it, which that's not all bad, but I want to get some good coverage here as well. So I've mixed up a nice teal kind of color here, and I'm going to go ahead and paint my feathers in this color. I'm being careful. I'd rather not get it on the surface here, but if I do, I know I can paint over it. Now, one thing I would like to caution you with your clay, when you add liquid to your clay, it's going to start breaking down a little bit. You could feel, like I can feel the brush starts to drag a little bit. I want to make sure that my paint is not overly wet, and that I don't spend a tremendous amount of time in one place brushing over and over because it's just going to be a little too wet. The clay, of course, is a natural material. And honestly, if you wanted to with your clay, you don't need to throw it away. If you're not happy with your piece, you can let it dry and literally soak it in water and rework it. It would be bringing it back to its original clay state. I've got this little piece over here I want to get. Now, I'm not going to worry about painting the back of it because, of course, it's not going to show. If I was going to give it as a gift, I might paint the back of it just so that it looked nice and finished. I think what I'll do here, too, is I have a slight edge on the wing as it meets the body. This brush is too big to really get that. So I'm going to get a smaller brush for that little detail work there. You can see right here, I'm trying to be careful again not to get the body of it
Now, as you work along, once the piece is dry, I think I had mentioned the other day, you can always come back, and on this body area here, you have a nice flat surface that you could add some stylized little elements to it. Oh, flowers or leaves or peace signs and emojis, anything that you would want. Okay. That looks pretty good there. Now, I like this color so much. I think that what I'll do here is I'm going to add a little more white to this color and just lighten it up so that I can paint the background or of his head. So let's get just a little more white. I'm going to mix the side of the paint here. I'm not going to just dab in and mix the whole thing. I'm going to mix it off to the side, and that way I can see the contrast that I have between the two colors. And then I don't have to add so much white to get that color a little bit lighter. Now, if I wanted, I could continue the same process and then end up with a monochromatic, all one color. But I'm thinking something different here. So here we go, a little lighter for his face. Yeah, I think that's just about right. Have you established the colors that you want on your owl and are moving ahead with doing some painting? Now, I know that my beak is going to be yellow, and I'll probably keep the eyes white. Oops, I almost got the wrong color. Now, I did get a little smaller brush, not as small as for the details, but just a little smaller brush, because this area right here is, I want to get that paint down in there and try. I got a little bit on the eye, but I know I can cover that. If you do have some grooves or crevices in the paint, try to make sure that you do get some paint down in there. Now, of course, if you have some extra clay, I hope you come back and experiment with some other projects. I know we explored some with some of the other classes, some different techniques, and you can make up some of your own designs. One more color, and then my crazy owl will need to dry. I'm going to mix up a little bit of pink here. So I have a little dab of white and the tiniest bit of red. I know that it doesn't take much red to make pink, and I don't want to be wasteful with my paint and making way too much. That looks a little light. I'm going to take just a dab more here of the red. Oh yeah, now we're getting close to cotton candy pink. Well, and different paints have different qualities to them and different, just the way that they mix up. This particular brand of acrylic paint that I have here, the green just leans, it has more blue in it. So it leans towards this kind of aqua color very easily. And actually, as a green, I have struggled with it a little bit because it just isn't like grass green. That it just isn't quite the right color, and I was having a hard time mixing like yellow into it to make the color that I thought it should be. I'm going to hold off doing my beak. I've got the basic body done. So that way my paint has an opportunity to thoroughly dry. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these things aside because we have another big project to work on and we want to have time to get a good start on that. So I'm going to just put this paint. This paint is totally different colors than what I'm going to be working on later. So I'm going to put those aside. Okay, so I'm going to set this guy aside and I'm going to carefully set my paint aside. Perfect. There we go. So yes, if I hold it right here, of course, it's a mask. Now, I do not have, I can't see through these. So it wouldn't be one that I would want to wear, but I think you could easily make it that way. So you have some options to explore in making it the way that you would like. So all of this is cardboard pieces that we'll cut out, paint. Then, of course, I have some construction paper here. And what really kind of gives it a big a frame and a big showing is I used just a grocery store sack. And this is just basic corrugated cardboard, regular cardboard. I chose this because I made it a little bit bigger, but any kind of cardboard will work. You need to be able to cut it. That's probably the main thing. The initial size is, I believe that was 12 by 10. I have my ruler here. Yes, 12 by 10. And this little piece where our additional elements are going to come from is almost 12 and by 5. So these are guidelines to give you an idea for size. Once you know the concept, then you can size it however you're comfortable with and the materials that you have. So the first thing that I'm going to do is give an outline here. And I'm going to do that in marker so that you can see it. Of course, I'm going to cut it and paint it. So on the piece that I have here that is 10 by 12, this piece happens to be a pizza box. My favorite pizza place. So any kind of cardboard will work. That's the back. I'm not concerned about that. So here on the head, I have my center right about here. I'm going to come about halfway over. So now I have 1/4. And I'm going to just draw a little rounded line to round off the head. What I have ended up here, this little piece right here, I'm going to keep that because that's going to turn into an eyelid. Again, I'm going to come to the center. I'm going to go over halfway. So I'm about 1/4, and I'm going to draw the other side of his head in. So now I have the top of his head is kind of rounded, and I have these 2 triangle pieces that, again, I'm going to save these pieces. I have a use for those. At the bottom, I'm going to do just about the same thing, but I'm not going to go over so far. I'm going to go over just a little bit so that I create a chin area. So again, I think I look and I see where about half is on my whole sheet. And I'm going to come over about an inch. And I'm going to round this up to create the chin and the side of his face. Again, I'm going to save this piece. This piece is going to become an ear. The same on this side. Try to keep it a little symmetrical. Pretty good. Save that piece. That's going to be an ear. Okay, on my smaller piece, this is where we're going to end up having two cheeks, two eyes, his kind of chin mouth area, his nose, the black part of his nose, and his chin. So for the cheeks, a coffee lid was just about right. For the eyes, you can use another sized lid. These are probably a little bit more than an inch. They don't have to be perfect. We wanted to work into some of the area that we're not using so that we use all of the material that we have here. The other pieces, I just made a straight line. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom. This is going to be the nose, the bridge of his nose. It looks like it's about 2 inches. So if I make a little tick mark here at 2 inches, I can just come across. There we go. Now it looks like, sure enough, 2 inches again. So I have one 2-inch piece that will end up cutting. And then the second 2-inch piece is going to create two elements, his black nose and his chin. The nose is 1.5 inches in. So again, your measurements don't have to be exactly this, but this kind of gives you an idea on how to proportion your pieces. I have my circle. I can just trace around that. This is just a hair bigger than what's going to fit on my paper or on my cardboard. My cardboard wasn't exactly the right size, but that's okay because I can just make a circle that's a little bit smaller. And of course, I need 2 of these because these are his cheeks. And finally, I have some area here and here. I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to draw 2 circles for his eyes. I don't want to forget his eyes. So we have all of the basic elements that we need. And what I've done, and I think I can just, so this is the bridge of his nose, the tip of his nose, the black area, his chin and kind of the mouth area, 2 cheeks, 2 eyes. And then really important, so you don't just toss them aside, not only do we have our big head here, but we have 2 eyelids and 2 ears. Okay, well, I got to get cutting here. Okay, so I am going to cut these pieces a little bit more. So what I'm going to do basically is I'm going to round off the top of the triangle and kind of round off this bottom part a little bit. I don't need that sticking out like that. Now I have 2 ears. Yeah, that's about right. Lion ears are not overly big. Okay, so now I have 2 ears. Of course, the face, and I'm going to do the exact same thing with these other triangle pieces. I'm going to round them all off a little bit, and that is going to create my eyelids. Easy straight cuts here. The cardboard's a little thick though, so I'm going to go down as far as I can one way and turn it around. I'm working on the nose right here. So what I'm doing is I'm rounding off the corners and I'm going to make it kind of a loose triangle shape. So the bottom's going to come in towards the center a little bit more. So I took that square and I rounded off the top and stylized here, bringing it down to a point a little bit more. So I started with a square. Now I have a piece that looks a little bit more like a nose to me. His chin, I'm going to do the same type of thing. I need to round this square, or excuse me, this rectangle. So I'm going to cut off the 2 bottom ends and kind of curve them up. So I'm cutting off little triangle shapes again. Kind of gives a little bit of a smile effect. That looks about right. And then I'm just going to come back and follow that same curve here. I'm not going to worry about these points here because those are going to go underneath, I think, going to go underneath my cheeks. And if I have to round them off, then I will. And finally, 2 eyes. I don't want to forget these little pieces. It's easy to, when you have some scraps on your table, to mistaken a piece that you want for a piece of scrap. So I'm going to just swipe these on the floor and clean them up later. I like to keep my workspace neat so that I don't get confused what's on it. Okay, so there we go. I think I have all my pieces ready. As you can see, I've layered these a little bit. I've stacked them up on top, creating just a little bit of relief. And that looks just about right. Okay, we've got some painting to do. So we'll get to painting. So I'm pulling my pieces just to the top of the screen here. I'll show you quick. And I'm kind of keeping them in order. Here's the bridge of my nose. Here's my nose. and the chin, and I've separated my pieces. So I have my ear, my eyelid, my eye, and my cheek on one side. So let's go ahead and start with the base. This might take more than one coat. It depends again on your paint, but cardboard is porous and it has, it's very dry. So it might take more than one coat. So we'll go ahead and make sure that I have a fair amount of paint here to start with. I'm pretty sure this is going to take 2 coats. So I'm just going to start with some yellow paint. I have a big brush here because I have a big area. And the other thing that I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to put down a painting surface. There we go. All right, so I've got a nice big wide brush and I have yellow paint here. Okay, so somebody asked earlier if I could show them the pieces put together again. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that quick. So I have 2 cheeks. I'm going to put my nose in here. The cheeks overlap the nose just a little bit. The bridge of the nose. So this will go on top of the side of the 2 cheeks. So it's basically only going to be glued on the edges. My chin is going to tuck right up underneath the corner, on the corner there. My ears, of course, you know, those go right on the top. 2 eyes and 2 eyelids. Okay, now I'm going to pull those off again quick. This guy has to dry. So I know that the eyelids and the nose are going, and the eyes are going to be different colors. So I'm going to pull those pieces down and take my ears it looks like I might need a little bit more paint to finish giving these their first coat. So the first coat that I did was just pure yellow. But when I work up the next coat, I'm going to add some color to tone that down a bit and make it a little bit more golden in color. Then I'm going to add some other colors to give it more interest, possibly some more yellows. I need to have just some nice black paint. The black will be for the nose and the eyelids. And then, of course, when we get to the eyes, well, basically you can make them whatever color that you wish. I'm probably going to keep with green. Okay, so I have now all of my pieces here, except for my eyes. I can go ahead and add just a little bit of green paint to my palette here, create his eye color. And then I'm going to set that aside and I'll come back to the pieces. So I'm using this really bright chartreuse green for his eyes. It's kind of a fancy name for lime green. All right, so now I have all my pieces that have one coat of paint on them. I'm going to set these aside. And what I would suggest that you might want to do is watch for a little bit as I come back to my pieces and add some additional color to them. I'm trying to make him just a more colorful, not necessarily realistic lion, but just something that is visually more fun and colorful. So I happen to have, voila, another set ready to go. These pieces are nice and dry. I'm going to set my nose and my eyelids off to the side. So right now, we have some awesome pieces, but he looks a little flat because all of the paint is one color. So I'm going to come back and add some more paint to give him some more visual interest and give him a little bit more depth, make it look like there's more space here using just color. I'll set these eyes aside too. So the first elements that I'm going to go ahead and work on are going to be his cheeks, his chin. Then I'll come back to the bridge of his nose, his ears, and of course, the main face. So with the cheeks, they're going to be forward a little bit on his face. So I want to lighten this up a little bit. So I'm going to put some white here next to my yellow. This brush is kind of big for this. So I'm going to set that one aside and get another size. This one is about a 1/2 inch brush. I think that'll be about right. So I'm going to take some of my yellow paint and my cheek, and I'm going to add some yellow at the bottom. And then I'm going to start mixing some white paint in towards the top. So I'm getting some soft yellow up here. And then I'm going to blend these two colors together. There, you can see where it's lighter here at the top. That's going to be the top of his cheek. And then this yellow is going to come down towards the bottom of his cheek. So I'm going to set that piece aside. And I'm going to do the same thing with my other cheek. So I'm going to start with just some bright yellow down at the bottom. Okay, I have two cheeks here. They look pretty even in the way that it's gone from the white down to some yellow. So I'll put those aside to dry. I'm going to do basically the same thing with his chin. Some of this brighter yellow at the bottom. And you think this whiter part, not only does it look like it's coming a little closer to you, but it gives an illusion like of fur and some soft whiskers. Maybe he's an older lion. So my white's not pure white. Of course, I have some yellow on my brush, so it makes it just a nice light yellow. Okay, now I think I am ready to go ahead and work on the bridge of his nose, his ears, and of course the main part of his face. So I think what I'll do is let's get some ears first, because I want this yellow down towards the bottom again. And his ears will have like little white tufts, light yellow tufts at the top. I'm going to come back to this ear and work on it again because there's a little center part that I'll work on to make the ear as well. But for right now, we've got a second coat on there, so it looks a lot more finished. Okay, now comes kind of the fun and crazy part. I'm going to set the bridge aside as I'm going to come back to that, and I'm going to work here on the main part of his face. I need to have some different colors here. I know that I want it to be a little bit more golden, red on my palette, or a little bit of red on my palette. Is I'm going to want to accomplish a couple different things here. I'm going to make a brown with the red and the green. I don't need a lot of it. I just want to tone down that yellow and create a little bit more of a golden color. And then I'm going to use red in that color as well, blending it onto my piece here to create a little bit more orangey effect. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is make up some brown. Oh, just a little bit. And we worked with this color before. So I'm taking mostly red and adding just a little bit of the green. I can always add more green, but I want the brown to lend more into a red tone. And this, of course, is just going to be used to tone down my yellow. So I'm not going to need very much of it. Here, that's about right. So I'm going to take a nice chunk of my yellow paint here and make that a little bit more golden. Now, of course, a lion has fur, so we don't have to worry if the paint's not 100% mixed, because fur is just like your hair. It actually has different colors in it. So if we still have some lights and darks in there, that's okay. So I have my bigger brush here again because I have a big space that I'm going to be covering. So I'm adding my second coat of paint here. And then what I'm going to start doing so that I create some a little bit more visual interest, because I don't want it to be just all a golden shade. There's some areas I know I can pick up just a tiny bit more brown, and I can add a tiny bit more red on the sides of his face where it's going to meet the mane. I think I'd like that to be just a little bit darker. So I'm going to take these colors, and off to the side of my palette, I'm going to start blending some of this little darker color so I get kind of an orangey shade. I still have my bright yellow and a golden yellow here on the side here. So I still have those colors to work with too, but I am going to come and to add into my cheek area. I want this to blend. I don't want it to just be like bold cheeks. I already have bold cheeks. This is just onto the side where it's going to meet and go into the mane. We'll add a little bit more color there. I know the bridge of my nose is going to be in this area, and I want that to show up a little bit differently too. So I'm just adding some little different shade here. Maybe the sun's hitting his face right here. Now, this is a good time to think about the bridge of my nose because I want it to kind of blend into this. So as I'm working here, I'm going to pick up a little bit more of this golden shade and work that up onto the bridge of my nose so that it's going to blend in nicely with the rest of his face. Looks like I need a little bit more over here. He looks a little lopsided there. That's better. And then over here on his cheek area, just blending this in a little bit more so that it kind of goes off to the side of his face there. Now I'm going to take my little darker color that I have here, as I need to have some way to show that his ears have depth. So I took that darker color and I'm going to add a little area for like the inside of his ear. And what I'm doing is I'm using the side of my brush straight up and down to kind of make it look just like a little bit furry in there. Of course, I have two ears, so I want to do it on both of them. Okay, now I could continue to work on this and build this up. There are some areas that, yeah, I wish were a little bit brighter or darker, but I want to be able to show you how to create the mane. So, and how to put the pieces together. So right now, I'm going to just let this dry. I think we've got him pretty good. And I'll show you how to do the mane. So if you're painting, please continue to paint. And you can do the mane. Follow along, listen as we do the mane. This is, it's actually very easy and very quick. What takes time is probably the drying process. Okay, so I'm going to set that on the side. I have 3 colors of just regular old construction paper. I chose colors that kind of reminded me of the lion and the savanna where he lives. And basically, I'm going to use just 1-inch strips across. So what my pieces end up being is 1 by 9. So I'm going to use it in the landscape or horizontal like this. I have my trusty ruler right here. So I can kind of tick out 1-inch marks across. This paper, yeah, it's pretty much 12 inches by 9 inches. So if it's not exact, that's okay. I'm just going to make my tick marks on one side. Then I'll come down and make the tick marks on the other side. Now I have all 3 of my pieces of paper here together, but I would be doing them individually. But so I can get my pieces done, I'm going to try to do them all at once. Okay, so I have 3 pieces here. Again, if I were doing this here at the museum, I would normally just do 1 piece at a time, or I even have a paper cutter. I might just do that. But I'm going to hold my pieces very tightly so I can cut 3 at one time. Of course, the lion's mane is what distinguishes him from the rest of his pride, from the rest of his group as being the head guy. And it's what makes lions probably so attractive that we see them in movies and we have stories and books written about lions because they're awesome creatures. And part of that is because that mane makes them look so majestic. And I think that's where we get king of the jungle. Okay, so I have plenty of strips for his mane. I did find on mine, it took every one of these. I did not have any leftovers. But I did do something else to these strips of paper. And this is a paper technique that you can use on other projects as well. So I took my strips. There's a couple different ways to do this, but an easy way to do it is if I take my pencil and I curl the paper. I don't need to go all the way down, but the paper has memory and it's going to create a nice little curl for you. So I curled all of mine. So before I glued them on, I curled them all. Now, of course, I'm not going to take the time to do that to all of them because I'll glue them all together later. So over time, they'll relax a little bit, but that curl will stay in your finished piece. I'm just taking my fingers and am pulling it through and creating the curl that way too. All right, so I have all my pieces. I'm going to come back to those. I'm going to go ahead and glue these together. So the first thing that I would do I'm not 100% dry here. I can see it's still a little shiny, but that's okay, I think. Is I'm going to glue the mane on. So I would have all my pieces ready. Now I'm going to glue on the back side, right? So this is a little bit tricky. I have this, I want to glue this so that the curl comes towards me, but that would be backwards. So I need to make sure that the curl is actually away from me so that it is on the curling onto the front of the piece. That piece, I want to have an orange right here in the top. So I'm coming in about 2 inches to make sure that I have a fair amount of support for the construction paper mane as it goes around. And the way that I would be working this is from the top to the bottom, side to side, and then fill in. So I made sure my curl is to the front. Add a little bit of glue, and I'm going to come off the bottom. Then I'm going to go back. I'll need a couple more pieces here quick. I've got it established at the top and at the bottom. I'll curl a few here. They don't all have to be the same kind of curl. Just makes it kind of fun. And then I'm going to come to either side. Curl forward about 2 inches in. Once I have that established, then I'm just going to come back and space the rest of my pieces all the way around. So those can dry on there. You know that I'll be finishing all the way around with with his mane. But right now I'm just going to come back and add the pieces so that you can see how he is all put together. I think the easiest place to start is at the top. So we'll add some glue. Now, I want the ears to come off of it, so I'm only going to add the glue towards the bottom, off on either side. Now, the wonderful thing about cardboard is it glues really well. And you can see, I don't really need an excessive amount of glue. More glue is not necessarily better. So I have his 2 ears up at the top. Now I'm going to go ahead and lay the rest of the pieces out before I glue them down. I'm going to lay them all out so that I'm pleased with the placement before I start gluing. On the cheeks, I want to make sure that the light is at the top. So I have my 2 cheeks. My nose is going to go in the center there. The mouth and chin really is going to go, I might have to scoot this up a little, it looks like. I want it to go just underneath my cheeks. Two eyes. Two eyelids. Okay, I think I'm about ready to glue. Now, when I'm gluing, I know the eyes are flat on the surface, so I can put glue right in the middle. That'll hold those down. The eyelids are actually on top of the eyes. So really the only place that I need glue here is at the top of the eye to glue that. It doesn't need to be glued down to this surface. I don't really need glue there because that's not where it's touching and where it's going to be glued. And the same is going to hold true when I start working down here. The chin area is glued directly to the surface of the face, and so is the bridge of the nose. But my cheeks are really just barely on the side. And same here with his nose. It really is only on the sides that I need to get some some glue. Okay, let's start gluing in. No, I can take these off. That looks about right. Don't need a lot of glue for this. I know that this glue is going to hold that down right on the top of his eyes. And notice when we talk about relationships, there's a relationship between the top of his eyelid here and the bridge of his nose. They're virtually touching, very close together there. Okay, so I know I need a little bit of glue here, a little bit of glue here. And a little bit of glue on each side of the nose. Now, some of the things that you can come back to do later is, of course, you need a pupil for the eye. And as I recall, yes, I looked this up, and lions do not have the same kind of eyes that cats have. So I would put a pupil for his eye. You might add some dots for the whiskers to give him a little bit of more detail there. And finally, I would also, this isn't 100% dry, but I would come back. Now this is just with a marker, and add the bottom of his eye. You could fill that in a little bit. There we go. Now, I certainly hope, again, that you'll come back and revisit some of these techniques that you have been adding to what you're capable of doing and exploring. Keep being creative. Bye, everyone.